Steel Curtain Network.
For Jorgito! Goes down! Najee Harris! DJ Watt!
What is up, Steeler fans, and welcome back to another post-game show. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis, and we are celebrating another Steelers victory. No, it wasn't pretty. No, it's what we said last week, yet the Steelers are still 2-0 after beating the Broncos 13-6 in the Mile High City. Let's welcome in our panel of hosts, so to speak. Dave Schofield, what's going on?
Oh, it's nice to be 2-0. I didn't think this game was going to be nearly as nerve-wracking as it ended up being. I just wish that I felt as good at the end of the game as I did at halftime of the game.
That's true. Bryan Davis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm glad to be here. Roll call. 0-2 Baltimore Ravens. Here. 0-2 Cincinnati Bengals. Here. 1-1 Cleveland Browns. Here. Pittsburgh Steelers at 2-0 and top of the division. For now, we'll take it. Woo! Here.
Right. That's right. Mike Tomlin improves. He was 1-5 in Denver going into this game, so that goes to 2-5. And he beats a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. We're going to break all this down. But as we always start our podcast, we do knee-jerk reaction. So, Dave, what was your knee-jerk reaction after the game?
It was good to get out of there with the win. It was good to start with, finding the touchdown zone, being able to put up 10 points in the first half, the defense pitching the shutout through the first I think I have it down like 49 minutes and 18 seconds of the game. I do believe it was. But it was also a little bit nervous to just have to hold on a little bit, especially it's like the penalties kept killing the offense and the defense had to be on the field so much in the altitude in the second half. It was not a good recipe for success in the second half, but it was enough to get out of there with the win.
Bryan, what was your knee-jerk reaction?
With Justin Fields, some of his best ability is availability. Some of his best ability is escapability, but the entire team has the ability of escapability by getting through that with pretty hostile environment, tough because of the altitude. They had to overcome a lot of mental errors. They had to overcome some dumb penalties as well that I just thought were crazy. I thought some of the offsetting penalties in the fourth quarter were to extend this game a little bit longer. There were a couple. There's a penalty, a hold, I think on Dan Moore Jr. that I was really confused about because I really didn't think he made that hold. I thought one of the hands of the face on Joey Porter Jr. I'm still looking for. Now, the other Joey Porter Jr.
The wrong number is what they must have had to do because he didn't. I mean, I'm not saying that there was someone that I saw did it. I'm just saying he didn't.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
But I thought that was the extendability of the referees in the NFL, but it doesn't matter. 2-0 is the bottom line, and I'm still going to go to bed with a smile on my face.
Absolutely. My knee-jerk reaction was this game played out in a fashion that, in a way, the way I expected, in the fact that I thought the Steelers defense, I wanted to see a dominant performance, and that's exactly what we got. And so while everyone's going to sit here and say that 13 points isn't enough, and they're going to bemoan penalties as they should, and we'll talk about those, let's not undercut the defensive performance, red zone performance. They had 3 trips in the red zone, took away 6 points. That's it. I thought the Steelers defense was phenomenal, and you can't expect a defense to shut out an NFL team, even with a rookie quarterback, for the entire 4 quarters. They only gave up 6 points. Kudos to the defense. Let's give props where it's due, but let's also break this thing down like we always do, and that is talking about the offense and defense. But before we get to that, on the audio side, I want to take a quick pause to hear a word from a couple of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this. All right, we are back. Thank you for taking the time to listen to those. And let's start off with the offense like we always do, breaking it down by the numbers. We'll start off with Justin Fields, quarterback of the Steelers, 13 for 20, 117 yards passing, 5.9 yard average, did throw a touchdown pass to Darnell Washington, did not throw an interception, 2 sacks for 7 yards, a 97.3 rating, and will be credited with a fumble, even though it was a shotgun snap that Fields clearly wasn't ready for. Who's at fault there? that's something we won't know right now. But Dave, how do you assess the quarterback situation? What do you think?
Well, it's funny because it's so much of a "what have you done for me lately" league that it doesn't matter what you did in week one. We're really only going to focus on week two. Well, it's so much with this. It didn't matter what you did in the first half. We're really only going to focus on the second half because it's the one that was the most recent. Because Justin Fields in the first half was great. 10 of 12, 101 yards and a touchdown, 129.5 rating. But in the second half, 3 of 8 for 16 yards was what the Steelers had passing in the second half. Yikes. Now, as we say, they put themselves in bad situations a lot in the second half. They really did. So I thought Justin Fields was doing a nice job in the first half. All he had to do was duplicate that in the second half, and things would have been A-okay with me. But that second half was rough, and you can't just dismiss it. You have to take it into consideration with everything. So that's something that's definitely got to be cleaned up.
All right, Bryan, what's your take on the quarterbacks?
Man, I'm feeling a little bit 2020 here where, you're getting away with some wins. I thought the quarterback play was, like Dave said, pretty darn good in the first half. The entire offense was just not there in the second half. I don't know whether it was fatigued. I don't know what it was. It was good enough to get the victory this week. It's not good enough to continue to get victories in the National Football League, and we get that. But I think it's good enough to get Justin Fields another opportunity next week against the Chargers. So with that being said, I don't think he was garbage in this game. I just thought I also think the Denver defense was a lot better than anybody gave them credit for going in as well. So, as it wasn't pretty, but it's still pretty good enough to get that W.
It's a great point about Denver's defense. They are much better than a lot of people think, Bryan. And they do have their weaknesses, but they have really good corners, a really good defensive front. Yeah. But, everyone's going to focus on the Steelers, rightfully so. Dave, do me a quick favor. How many attempts in the first half for Justin Fields? And then how many attempts in the second half?
In the first, you mean just attempted throws? Oh, yeah, he was 10 of 12 in the first half.
Okay.
So 12 attempts in the first half, 3 of 8.
Only 8 times. Anyone else feel like they just tried to completely take the air out of the football and we're just going to try? And it almost felt like to me that at halftime, whoever was in charge, whether it's Arthur Smith, Mike Tomlin, whatever, said, we're just going to run this thing into the ground. We're going to kill as much clock as we can. Now, they did throw the football. I'm not going to try to say that they didn't. It just felt like there was a shift in the way the game was, the offensive game plan was structured. And maybe that was a part of what Denver did. They switched. They got themselves in order, which made things difficult for the Steelers, in which case that could be the case. But it just felt like the play calling perspective, from the performance perspective, from the way they approached the game, it just felt totally different. And so, yes, Justin Fields' numbers don't look right, but I don't feel like anyone else, Dave, did you agree with that at all? Any way, shape, or form?
Well, honestly, I would say how many passing plays did they have called back for penalties?
True.
Because it's not that they completely given up on the pass, but you kind of saw how it was working out to begin the game, in the first half. They were moving the ball so well, but what are you supposed to do on 2nd and 28? And so many times it was almost like Denver at halftime realized, hey, anytime we can get them in a long situation, they're going to be more in trouble. We've really got to focus on doing that. And I feel like that the Steelers, part of it was, Denver's defense doing pretty well, but a lot of it was their lack of execution, or even more importantly, their self-inflicting wounds that put them into bad situations where they can't stay on schedule. And then you're having to do, I know this didn't happen in this game particularly, but if it's 3rd and 16, I kind of understand that, hey, maybe we need to just hand it off, or we're going to be throwing a pass. More than likely, we've either got to get the yardage or it's going to fall incomplete. You don't mind that they're pushing it to at least trying to get the first down, even if you don't complete the pass. So I feel that's why part of the percentage was falling off, is because they were put in bad situations most of the time that they put themselves in just by shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, Bryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of thought too that, they weren't really trying to press the issue in the second half. I thought the clock burning, like you said, Jeff, was really what they were doing. I know there were some situations there. Look, I'm not trying to continue with the whole ref thing, but I thought Van Jefferson could have had a touchdown on that play. If I'm the Denver defender or the Denver coaching staff, I'm like, hey, good job on that. Good job on that
Holding his
one
hand.
play. Yeah, to go ahead and grab his hand. And that's a good pass interference call for Denver, actually, because, I thought he was off and running. I thought there were a lot of situations where one touchdown was taken away from George Pickens, of course. I just thought that the team was moving the ball, but when they had that adversity, they couldn't go ahead and replicate it and repeat it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, we have some super chats here. We'll get these on the screen here. Tom plays games. Tom Muir gives us $2. Said dollar per W. Did last week's come through? It did. Here we go. Thank you very much, Tom. We appreciate it. And then Sean Manahan gives us $5 and said, once it was 13-0 in the second half, I thought back to coward days of just run it out. This was, I think once you got to the fourth quarter, you could just tell we're going to run on first down, we're going to run on second down, and then we're going to see what it looks like on third down. And that's just exactly it. I don't think Mike Tomlin gives a flying F how they win the game. He just wants to win the game. Fans are going to worry about that stuff. And I'm sure, he'd love to score more points as long as they win. What did you want to say, Dave?
I was going to say, even in that field goal with the second half after the long pass interference, didn't it almost seem like they were just content with the field goal?
Yep.
Like they weren't going to push it for a touchdown? I would have liked to have seen them kind of push that in a little bit hard. I felt like I was just settling in. I was like, wait, they're having to kick it already? I thought that was their chance to really go. And it just seemed like they kind of more or less settled for the field goal, where I think if a touchdown there, if you really go for it, that definitely would have put it away.
Yeah. Okay. I want to switch gears here because we're going to leave the quarterback position. We normally do pass catchers, running backs. No, we're going to the offensive line next. And before we even talk about specific penalties or specific players, I want to know what you all think about Mike Tomlin's approach to right tackle. Now, we reported here on Saturday when we found out from our source that Troy Falatana was going to start this football game, and he did. But then I think it was the third drive of the game, Broderick Jones gets inserted into the lineup, and it's almost as if they're going to rotate these guys. Now, Dave, this is something you brought up in our podcast, and I said, that sounds like a really dumb idea. And I stand by my statement of it being a really dumb idea. But what did you think about seeing it the way it played out?
Well, let's just say this. It's very much a results-driven thing. And the fact that it didn't work is definitely like, what were they thinking? If it would have worked fine, everyone would have been like, I've had no problem with it. Of course, that's the way it is. But it failed so miserably that you realize, that's not a good idea. But you must give credit to the Steelers. Now, maybe it's because it was that bad that they abandoned it in the middle of a drive, didn't even finish the drive, and didn't do it again. They tried it. They tried it once. It was really, really bad for those plays, and then that was it. That was over. So I kind of could understand that they're saying, hey, it's Troy Falatana's first start in the NFL. He's been out injured. He only played in one preseason game before he got injured. Maybe we can ease it in, and we'll have Broderick do a series like 1 out of every 3, to that way we don't wear him down, let him get his feet wet. That doesn't sound completely crazy. But man, when you see how it worked out, it just looks like such a terrible idea. I'm just, like I said, I personally, I wouldn't have done it. I can see how you could reason with it, but I'm just so thankful that they didn't insist on sticking with it.
What about you, Brian? What was your take?
Well, you know what? I've tried some pickup lines before that I knew were not working, and I definitely would never go back to them again if they didn't work. And so I too give them credit for not going back to the same idea here. But here's the thing. I look at it a little differently, and I actually applaud them trying to not completely bury one tackle or the other. I like the fact it failed miserably, and they recognize that that's fine. But I like the effort to say, hey, look, we want to get Troy some reps. We don't want to completely stomp on Broderick Jones and deal with any confidence issues. But that's exactly what happened when he came in cold. Like Dave said, you can't have a guy come in cold. And when he did, you completely stunted his growth by doing so. So I understand the logic in trying it. I'm glad they abandoned it, but I feel like you killed a young tackle today.
I'm not going to go as far as saying that he's done. I don't think Broderick Jones, he's still a very young guy.
I don't think so either, but
I think that he'll rebound. I think the Steelers would be smart to say, okay, Broderick, you're starting, you're going to practice at left tackle. Like, that's it. Fautano will be the right side. We're getting you ready to play left, whether it's in a couple games or whenever it's necessary. He can play both sides. He's proven that. He played right tackle almost all last season. But I think now's when you got to give him some clear instruction as this is what we want you to work on. And if Dan Moore has to start the next few games and Broderick Jones has to get his confidence back and he has to kind of get back to health and all those things, that's fine. I thought that the rotation was, again, I said this on Saturday when Dave and I did the Sourced podcast. This is not a running back rotation where, like, you know, running back by committee. It's an offensive line. Like, you have to have that cohesion. You have to have the gel there. And I just thought it was stupid. Now, that out of the way, man, was that a horrible try for Broderick Jones. But he wasn't the only one. I don't want to pound on that guy. Dan Moore had a costly holding penalty. The interior looked rough at times. When I say interior, James Daniels got beat on more than one occasion. Spencer Anderson had his issues. The Steelers' offensive line as a whole, I didn't think had their best game. Dave, what was your assessment of the whole line?
Well, honestly, I thought the offensive line was playing, outside of Broderick Jones, was playing pretty solid the first half. I was, trying to pay attention a little bit more to Dan Moore. It's what I like to do. I'll probably try to rewatch the game in fast motion and watch all of his snaps. I didn't get to watch him as much in the second half. I don't think that was a hold they called on him. And the reason I'm watching Dan Moore is I want to see this is the baseline of play of what the Steelers are wanting at left tackle. And do they have someone that's going to be better than that or not? And I will say this. Broderick Jones played better last year than I expected him, and he didn't play like lights out last year. He kind of did a little bit when he was at left tackle the one game against the Ravens. I thought he was great. But he played at more than adequate on the right side. But he's still a very raw player. And I still think that there is a lot of growth and a lot of learning for him to do that he can still do. And the fact that he's not one of your best tackles out there, it's shocking to me because all offseason I was like, well, Broderick Jones is your best tackle. You got to figure out the other stuff. I'm learning now that he's not taking the step that I was hoping he would make, but he's also a very young and raw player. It doesn't mean that he can't. So they've really got to make sure that they're focusing on the right stuff with him. And maybe that means not being on the field for a little while, but it's not like he can't be the guy in the future. He has a very high ceiling. You've just got to see if you can get him there. Now, what was the original question again?
And what did you think about the rest of the offensive line?
Oh, the rest of the offensive line. So yeah, not as I'd really have to go back and watch the second half again, but the offense as a whole just was not clicking as much in the second half. And just so many penalties and getting off schedule and just out of kilter so much. It made it really hard to see if they were really settling in because it didn't seem like they were.
All right, Bryan, what was your take on the O-line?
You know what? I thought they were average, maybe a tad bit above. I mean, maybe a C+ because they still got the win. There were not strip sacks. There were a couple sacks, sure, but it wasn't anything that I was too concerned about. I did not hear James Daniels, Zach Frazier, or even Troy Fautanu in that much of a negative way. Really didn't. Yeah. Did we see a very egregious penalty on Dan Moore Jr.? Yeah, I thought it was phantom, but that's fine. But when are we going to start looking at number 65 and think of another 65, John Jackson? and realized that that guy was like a 12th round draft pick, an 11th round draft pick. He wasn't anything sexy, but held it down for 10 years. And right now, Dan Moore Jr., say he sucks all you want, he's holding it down.
Yeah, like I just said, out of all of it, I would say in the second half, he wasn't as good in the first half.
He
was really good.
Oh, that's okay, Dave. I wasn't really listening. So
I do think that the line misses Isaac Seumalo greatly.
Yeah.
Getting him back will be a huge boost whenever that happens. I don't think it'll necessarily be this week, maybe week 4, but getting him back, because Spencer Anderson's a great fill-in, but he's not that caliber of player. I think they missed that presence there on the offensive line. So we'll see. We have some super chats here to get to. Steel Dog 88 gives us $10. Thank you very much for that. He said, with the rotation of Fautanu and Jones, seems like they underestimated Dan Moore Jr. and have a first-round tackle they are not sure what to do with this season. Yeah, I again, if you listen to our podcast yesterday, which you can catch the whole thing on our YouTube channel and you can hear it on our audio form, we talked about how they had a plan, and then Troy Fautanu's injury messed up that plan. And so now what do you do? It's going to be interesting to see what they do. And thank you for the tip. We appreciate it. Wilson Pava gives us $1.99, said maybe a half for each, but Dave is on the money. Kudos to Dave. All right, let's
go. That was about the rotation thing.
Yeah. So Justin Gall gives us $4.99. Said the offensive line was opening up huge holes the entire game. I thought both Najee and Jalen Warren were not explosive at the end of their runs. I did think Najee was a little slow to hit the hole at times, started to kind of get it going in the second half, but yeah, it's when Denver starts to load the box, which makes it more challenging. And then lastly, Dennis Pavlik gives us $5, said finally used Mount Washington in the red zone and figured it worked. So that's a great way to shift to our pass catchers. I don't know if anyone else saw this. I saw it coming and I was like, you know what? They're motioning Darnell Washington out wide. And when he went out wide and I saw a cornerback on him, I said, here we go. He's throwing it to Darnell Washington. And my kids
are they
going
to throw it to him?
And my kids are watching with me and they're like, who? And I said, the guy at the top of the screen. Fields dropped back, didn't even look anywhere else, throws the ball. Darnell Washington with the lone touchdown of the season and of the game. He has 1 catch, 1 target, 5 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, leading the Steelers in receiving was Pat Freiermuth, had 4 catches on 4 targets for 39 yards. George Pickens, 2 catches for 29 yards on 4 targets. That number should have been astronomically higher.
I know.
But nonetheless, penalties, that's the second straight game. Jalen Warren, 2 for 19. Van Jefferson, 2 for 14. Calvin Austin, the third, 1 for 6. And thank God that guy's okay, because that hit that he took in the fourth quarter looked really, really bad. And I'm talking about Calvin Austin, the third. So, Dave, let's assess the pass catchers. What'd you think?
I feel kind of like I did last week. It's difficult to see too much of what's going on. I'm not seeing if they're getting open, if they're not getting open. But my goodness, once again, you've got George Pickens only had 2 catches, but the wide receivers combined only had 5. Five catches to wide receivers, but you're only completing 13 passes. So it's really, really difficult to judge that, because I feel like if those plays, my goodness, Calvin Austin had that first down play called back on a penalty. The George Pickens play, and you also have to take into account the amount of yardage that the Steelers got, because their pass catchers were drawing pass interference penalties as well. George Pickens had 1, Van Jefferson had 1. So in all, I'm not saying that they did fantastic, but they didn't do anything in this game that made me think, oh, well, they're not getting the job done as much. It would be nice to have another strong option there, especially wide receiver, but I did like that they were using at least the middle of the field a little bit when they tried to.
All right. Bryan, what do you think about the pass catchers?
Let me ask Dave a question. Do we get drop numbers?
No.
Drops usually come with the advanced stats on Pro Football Reference around Wednesday, or you can get them generally the next day when the grades come out by PFF. They're not official. It's not an official stat. So those two places don't even always match of the drops. Like there's been times where, they both had that the Steelers receivers had 4 drops, but they had them by 4 different people than what each other has. So it's all a judgment call based on some of those places that do stats.
If there were drops in this game, I think there was only one. Was it Van? Maybe, I'm not sure, but I think I recall one, and just trying to go back and think about it. But look, I'm not really seeing enough from. I think it's an incomplete of what we're seeing from the wide receivers. It's really funny because when they do get open, hey, at least you're getting some of those calls on those penalties. I'm complaining about all these penalties against the Pittsburgh Steelers. There were a lot of penalties against the Denver Broncos as well. So there's some more that they should have got nailed with. But I think that is just the new NFL fourth quarter agenda to keep things close. But I would say that I'm not complaining too much about the receivers as of yet.
I agree with everything you guys said. Let's talk about the running backs. The Steelers rushed the ball. Let's hear it. They ran the ball 36 times for 141 yards, 3.9 average. Najee Harris led the way, 17 carries for 69 yards, 4.1 yard average. Jaylen Warren, 9 for 42, 4.7 yard average. Justin Fields, 8 for 27, 3.4 average. And Cordero Patterson, 2 carries, 3 yards, a 1.5 average. Guys, what did you think about the running backs? Dave, we'll start with you.
I was fine with everything. It was, I was even surprised that Patterson was even getting out there at all and having a couple carries with Jaylen Warren getting back into things a little bit better. But once again, the Steelers wanted to run the ball, but then you put yourself in a weird situation in the second half where you're not conducive to doing it. I thought they did even better than last week. I know 3.9 doesn't look great as the overall average, but if you look at your two main running backs, both of them going over 4, I thought that they did well enough.
Bryan, what do you think about the running backs?
Everything Dave said, but I want to add something to that. The fact that Justin Fields did not carry them on the ground like he seemed to do last week as much too. So, I feel like this was more of a show between the two main backs and throw in some Cordero Patterson as well. I like the 3-headed attack. I know Patterson is probably the guy that fans are not really loving at this point in time, but I like the fact that you have that third guy in there. I think they're keeping it fresh. I love the fact that they can rotate these guys and rotate them on the same drive. You just, like Jeff says, you just don't want to do that with tackles, but I really think Najee is carrying them well. And remember, I said this stat last week. If you're looking for a guy that can be a consistent 1,000-yard runner, you get 70 a game out of a guy like that. You're going to get 1,000 yards in the old 16-game schedule. You're definitely going to get 1,000 yards out of a guy like that if he plays all 17 games as well. So I really I feel like the big thing that we haven't mentioned is Jaylen Warren is healed. And when Jaylen Warren is healthy, you get so much better of a running attack too. So I thought the running game, not having to rely on Justin Fields, actually took a step up this week.
Yeah, that's interesting. I will say this, Mike Tomlin, go all the way back to right before the preseason. He did a press conference. They asked him about Justin Fields, what he thinks. And he said, I don't want to take away what he does best. And that's being a dynamic runner of the football. There were times in this game where I felt like he could have run more and he didn't, and he chose not to. And I'm not sure if it's because maybe he wants to prove that he can do it. Who knows? But there are times where I want to say, like, Justin Fields, just run the ball, get 10 yards, move the chains, keep the drives going. Sometimes I want those players that are dynamic to do that. And it kind of reminds me of Cordell Stewart back in the day when he was determined to be a thrower of the football. And some of that slash stuff that he did that was so electrifying that made him who he was, it just kind of fizzled out. I don't want that to happen if Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback for the long term. All right, so that's some of the offense. Let's move on to the defense. But before that, we're going to take a quick break. If you're watching live anywhere on any platform, we're not going anywhere. On the audio side, we'll be right back after this break. All right, we are back, Steeler fans. Second half, we talk about the Steelers defense, special teams, and give our final thoughts. Let's start off, though, with a super chat. We have Steeler Fan 69 gave us $5. Did another win, another super chat. I've just opened an Elvis themed steakhouse. It's aimed at people who love meat tender. There you go. Steeler Fan 69 now chiming in on YouTube, not just on my mailbag segment of my Wednesday Let's Ride podcast. Thank you very much, Steeler Fan 69, for the tip, and everyone else that gives their hard-earned dollars to us. We do appreciate it. Let's talk defense, and let's start off with looking at Bo Nix. Let's look at Bo Nix and what Bo Nix did, and then we'll start using that to diagram the Steelers defense. Bo Nix finished 20 of 35, 246 yards, a 7-yard average, did not throw a touchdown. He threw 2 interceptions, was sacked twice, a 55.2 rating. Now the Steelers, because I want to lean in on the pass rush now. The Steelers had 2 sacks, one of Alex Highsmith, one by TJ Watt, and 7 quarterback hits. TJ Watt with 2, Cameron Hayward with 2, Keanu Benton with 1, Alex Highsmith with 1, and that's it. So what did you think about the pass rush in this game, Dave?
I didn't think they blitzed as much as I thought they were going to. So I thought there was a lot of times they were right around him, disrupting things when he was going to throw, even if they weren't getting home to get the sacks. So it was disruptive, but I'll be honest with you. This is one of those games that it's like, ooh, in the altitude, the defense on the field a long time in the second half. It'd have been nice to have more than just 3 outside linebackers for this one particularly. But I think it wore down and they got tired as the game went on. And I mean, I don't want to make excuses about the altitude, but altitude, it's real. It's a real thing. So they were so dominant for so much of the game. They really were. I mean, my goodness, in the first half, they had 39 yards passing, 39 yards. So that meant in the second half, Bo Nix had over 200 yards passing in the second half. He actually had a lower rating because that also went along with 2 interceptions. So, but I thought it was pretty disruptive. Not finishing as strong as you would have liked them to finish, but my goodness, as good as they were playing through 3/4 of the game, what more do you really want to ask for?
That's true. Bryan, thoughts on the pass rush?
I thought the pass rush was pretty good. I didn't hear a lot of Cam in this game. I felt that maybe it's just me that I'm just used to thinking that TJ Watt is being held on every play. And I can't say he's being held on every play. It's just every other play. And I know that's still a big deal to me. I really feel that the defense did their job all the way across the board. But you asked about Bo Nix at the very beginning and the pass rush. Bo Nix kind of impressed me in this game because the way he started out and the way he ended this game were 2 different Bo Nixes. And if he can get a whole lot of help there in Denver, you might have a pretty good quarterback. This defense is a lot better than what the stats showed today. And this is still, if you were just doing the eye test, you still think that this defense dominated most of this game, especially when you're looking at some of the stats. Then the fourth quarter comes in, and a lot of that is a team playing prevent. A lot of that is a team just letting the numbers and digits fly off the clock. So, I feel like the defense just A+ again did their job this entire time. But I also agree with Dave. I don't feel like they were sending him a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, they dropped TJ Watt in coverage more this game than they ever did last week. And on top of that, the Steelers
dropped a lot too. If you ever,
yes, yeah. They did not blitz. So it's almost as if everyone thought, here we go, rookie quarterback. They're going to send the house, whatever. They didn't. They sat back and said, all right, let's see if this guy can diagnose things, pick us apart. The answer was not really. And so they didn't get the sack numbers, only 2. But nonetheless, they got to him enough that they disrupted his time and rhythm, especially, Corey Trice fooled him with the interception there in the red zone, which was a huge play, absolutely huge play. Let's talk about the pass defense there. The pass defense, again, mentioned Corey Trice, interception, DeMonte KZ, interception to seal the game, although it was pretty much over anyways. Nonetheless, it still counts. It's 2 takeaways. The Steelers are +5 in turnover differential with 0 turnovers and 5 takeaways on the year. So pretty impressive stuff. Joey Porter Jr. was flagged a couple times in this game. I don't know if that second one, I know we talked about it earlier, was him with the defensive hands in the face or not, but he did get called with egregious holding. What were your guys' takeaway from the secondary in this game, Dave?
Well, I thought, Corey Trice looked like they might have even tried to pick on him a little bit. I don't know if the rookie quarterback was aware enough to do that, just where he was coming in with Dante Jackson, who was cramping and dealing with the altitude. You could see, I don't know if you guys noticed when he came off, they had to stop the game for him the second time. When he hit the sideline, he was motioning for oxygen, that he needed oxygen is what was going on. But I thought, Joey Porter Jr., handsy. Is he going to give up a penalty? Yeah, he's probably going to do that some. But once again, what did he do? Cortland Sutton had 1 catch for 26 yards. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that Porter was on him the whole time, but that's kind of what you were looking at in this game. I thought there was a couple times, the 4th down play, there was a breakdown in coverage with what the Broncos did. With outside of a couple things like that, I thought the pass defense once again did a nice job.
Bryan, thoughts on the pass defense?
Yeah, I think you get what you get with Joey Porter Jr. His scouting report is that he's handsy, but I love the fact that he really kept Cortland Sutton on an island. And I really think that was a pretty big deal. Just like I thought, Pickens against Surtain was going to be a great matchup. I should have mentioned how I thought Sutton versus Porter would be an amazing matchup as well. And I feel like Porter won that. Now, the penalties that, the one penalty was pretty egregious in the second half on Porter. Yeah, I'm calling that. But I think a lot of these penalties that went against the Pittsburgh defense in that second half were basically, again, if the Steelers were losing in that game, I don't think those penalties are getting called. I just think it's a situation where they have to call those these days.
Yeah, I do want to say, when we talk about the secondary, Deshaun Elliott, I thought, had a phenomenal game. So you got to mention him. I thought that Dante Jackson had a great game. Joey Porter Jr. is Joey Porter Jr. He's having a really good second season, at least in the first 2 games. Corey Trice, Beanie Bishop's making plays. This secondary is having some people show up that maybe we're not accustomed to seeing in general and step up in big moments. But hey, I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. I thought the Steelers secondary did well. The last aspect of the defense I want to mention is the run defense. Everyone talked about this going into the game with Bo Nix at home, first home game as the Denver Broncos starter as a rookie. They're going to want to run the football. So we got to stop the run. Bo Nix led the Broncos in rushing, 4 carries for 25 yards. Javonte Williams, 11 carries for only 17 yards. Tyler, I think he's Beatty, I hope I said that correctly, 1 rush for 16 yards. In Jaleel McLaughlin, 3 for 6 yards, 3 carries for 6 yards. The Broncos rushed 19 times for 64 yards, a 3.4 yard average, and a long of 16. Dave, got to be happy with those numbers, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is still the story. I know some people are like, oh, where's Cam Hayward? He hasn't done it. Cam Hayward was one of the top run defenders in the NFL in week 1, and I thought he was doing a pretty good job against the run out there again in week 2. So, and then look at the results. My goodness. I broke down the numbers last year, the huge discrepancy of the Steelers in the run defense when Cam was out versus when Cam was back. And look at what they've done this year. 64 yards this week. What was the total last week?
89, I think.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's that the other team can't run the ball. And look at this, 64 yards rushing, and 25 of it came from the quarterback.
Yeah.
Which means it was most likely, I mean, did they have any that you could tell were obviously a designed run play by the quarterback? Or was it where he escaped?
I can remember one.
Yeah. So to me, the run defense getting the job done is really a huge story with everything else. And when it does happen, it doesn't always get the glitz and glamour that you get otherwise. But those guys up front, they're doing a nice job of clogging things up. And And the guys on the second level were doing a great job of not letting them bust a big one. Because what was the longest run?
16.
Yes, it was 16. So,
yeah. All right, Bryan, what was your take on the run defense?
I thought it was stellar. Those stats back it up. I think everything you say. Yeah, I'm glad Dave pointed that out about Cam. I was talking about Cam on the pass rush, but that's fine when you have the pass rushers that you do, and you have Cam helping shut everybody down. So, as far as everything goes, the run defense, very pleased with. Love to see the standings where they rank as far as a run defense going into week 3, because I feel like you can't run on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I can't wait to see next week a team that prides themselves on running. And the way the Steelers stand up to the Chargers is going to really tell us a lot about the rest of the season too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Mike Tomlin said it best. He was asked after the game about, in these games, do you really have to ask your defense for a little bit more? He said, yeah, I do, because they're capable of giving me more. And so I think that's appropriate. That I said this last week, I'll say it again. We all knew that regardless of who the quarterback was, with a new coordinator, new quarterback room, a lot of new pieces in the puzzle, especially along the offensive line. And this was even with Sayamalu before his injury. The Steelers were going to have to win these games with defense. And then hopefully the offense starts to catch up and they start to get things together. And then by season's end, or that stretch run after the bye, that's when things are really clicking. And I still stand by that. And the Steelers are doing that. They're winning.
It's how it's playing out. Yeah. You're exactly right, Jeff.
Let's go to some super chats here before we go to special teams. Todd Williams gives us $4.99. Thank you very much. He said, without a number 2 receiver, do you think we need to start using Pat in that role? I don't know if I would say that. I mean, Pat Freiermuth led the team in receiving today, and I think they're using him in different ways. I think it's a week-to-week thing, but that's just me. Let's go to MK. Gave us $4.99 as well. Said all aspects of offense have been unimpressive, better than Canada. If you think this offense has improved, you're fooling yourself. All right,
I think this offense is the same. You're fooling yourself.
Thanks for the $4.99. We appreciate it.
The $4.99 is great. But bottom line, Darnell Washington got a touchdown today because it was his first ever red zone target. He was never targeted one time in the red zone last year. He was only targeted 10 times the whole year. There are various things that you can see. Now, is it going to take some time to get it rolling? Sure. But also, you got to look back at the Steelers offense in week 1 last year. It was not good at all. And now, but you can't deny that the quote unquote results have been similar. You're not wrong in that aspect. The Steelers have put up 18 and 13 points. That's it. You can't deny it. It's now, just because the results are the same doesn't mean that they are the same thing. Right. So we, at least with this one, there you can see flashes of things that should give you more hope that I don't feel like the offensive coordinator is holding the offense back like it was in the past.
Yeah. Bryan, anything of that, Bryan?
Not at all. No,
okay.
I'm sorry. There's a super chat that I can't wait for you to bring up.
Okay. Let's hear. Thomas Eads said, gave us $5 to TJ and others were getting held every other play. Now, I am not one to complain about like holding as long as it's equal. And when they called Dan Moore for holding, I was like, TJ, worse than that. Got to be kidding me. TJ Watt gets choked out like a submission hold in MMA, and they don't call it. And then Dan Moore gets like just a little bit of the shoulder pad and tugs a little bit, and that draws a flag. That pisses me off. But inconsistency with officiating is nothing new for us that watch NFL football. Heath Davis, he's another one of my Ride or Die crew that always chimes in on the mailbag segment. Gave us $2. Says, why score many points when few point do trick? Is that what you wanted to see, Bryan?
No, Heath has another one, and okay. I think we're related because when I read this one,
this is right.
It's Davis.
Okay, well, so hold on.
You're right.
There's something important about what he said here. because that was actually, you could tell this is what Jeff was talking about with the offensive philosophy in the second half. The Steelers were up 10-0, then they went up 13-0. Their philosophy was like all the offense has to do. I mean, it's like the third quarter of the Bourbon Bowl. You might as well just start taking a knee, okay? Because you want to take a knee because unless your offense screws it up, your defense is going to get the job done to win the game the rest of the time. It's almost like, could they have tried to score more points later in the game? Sure. But what's more important, scoring as many points as possible or winning the game? So they opted to say, hey, we're just going to make sure we're doing right by our defense. They'll get the job done for us.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's go to Heath Davis's other one, $2. He said, Sean Payton coaches like an angry bus driver. Now, if you're talking about Sean Payton's reaction after I don't know if it was targeting or hitting a defenseless receiver. I'm not sure which one it was. He had every right to go off on that player, not for the penalty, but because the guy took his helmet off and threw it, which could have been another 15-yard penalty because you're not allowed to take your helmet off on the field of play. That's an NFL rule. My guess is he was yelling at him saying, look, the penalty is the penalty. You're making him trying to make a play. You can't throw your helmet off because that would have tacked another 15 yards onto it. But he's right. Sean Payton does look angry. Did you want to chime in with that, Brian?
I just love. I need a little bit more clarity from Heath on that. But I tell you what, that seems like a Davis comment, and so it's almost like we were separated at birth. The last name, we're somewhere in that tree together, Heath.
When I hear angry bus driver, I immediately go to Billy Madison and Chris Farley playing the bus driver and. No yelling on the bus.
Yeah. My son and his friend were watching that yesterday. He was introducing it to his friend. And I love when the teacher, I forget her name, but Veronica
Vaughn. How do you not know
that? Hey, Miss Vaughn.
That Veronica Vaughn is
Chris Farley.
Piece of, I know from experience. All right. Anyways, Dennis Pavla gives another $5, says the penalties are stopping the offense and that can be fixed. And that's, self-inflicted wounds, shooting yourself in the foot, whatever you want to say. Yeah, those are fixable. Wilson Pava gives us $4.99, said, are we a lot better? No. Are there signs of life? Yes. Are we improving? Duh. Best OC we've had since Arians. 1 touchdown has us leading the North. That's a win. There you go. Yeah,
the offense isn't even rolling. Now, are they guaranteed to get rolling? That's what we want to be able to see. They've got to keep improving. It's got to get better and better and better. But just doing this much and they're 2-0, it's got to be somewhat encouraging.
Yeah. All right. I do want to touch on the special teams. And Chris Boswell goes 2 for 2 for field goals. That's nothing new. He makes another 50-plus yarder. At altitude, I was expecting that. I was waiting to see if they would go for like a 65-yarder, punting that far. But nonetheless, Corliss Waitman, first game as the punter. I thought he did well. And I'll read his stat line here quickly. Corliss Waitman had 8 punts, 53-yard average, 3 touchbacks, 2 inside the 20 and a long of 58. I thought his last punt was his best punt. And, the announcers are like, there's no way they're going to punt it to him. No, Tomlin said, give it to him. Let's cover the punt. So any thoughts on special teams, Dave?
Yeah. And Boz was able to kick a really long field goal because he trusted the holder. There's got to be a lot of trust going on there with that. I thought the punting was good. I thought the coverage was good. I'm sorry. They couldn't block Ben Skronik on as a gunner. They held him multiple times. And they got flagged for it too. Because they held him because he was just getting a free run at the guy. He's been elevated twice, and I know it's
how many do you get?
I think you get 3.
That's what I thought. I was going to guess
now.
3.
They starting last year. Then they could do it again in the playoffs. After that, then he's got to be subject to waivers afterwards. But honestly, I think you might have to try to find a way to get that guy on the 53-man roster because you could carry an extra wide receiver just to have him do. Some people, I know some people commented like, why are they elevating this guy for the practice squad? You can just go sign Miles Boykin off a practice squad. Well, so far this dude's been every bit as good. It's standing out even more. Just got to give credit where it was there. But I thought the punting, we'll see how it is when it's back in Pittsburgh. It's Denver, so you got to put a little asterisk next to it. But I was happy with it.
All right, Bryan, any thoughts on special teams?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. One, I think he is more Boykin than Boykin. I just think that guy. I think Dave's right. You need to find a spot for him. I also think these new kickoff rules are keeping Danny Smith Jr. from having to do anything whatsoever. So I feel like he's even better of a coach now and he wasn't that good of one in the first place. But I think he's fine just for the fact that you don't really have to do anything, and anything that's going to happen is going to end up with a flag on either team when there's a kick. We might as well stop kicking.
I tell you what, I want to say this because I was going to have it on a loser list for my Let's Ride podcast, but I chose, I'll just say it in the post game. A loser would be the NFL's dynamic kickoff. And I use air quotes there for those that are listening on audio because there's nothing freaking dynamic about it. Everyone's just kicking touchbacks again. So if the whole purpose was we're going to make this an interesting play, it's a bathroom break once again. Now, granted, Denver had a great kick. Jaylen Warren bobbled it, and they got Steelers started the 15. That's not the norm. We talked about this on a podcast. I don't know if it was the whip round with Kevin Smith that I do, or I think Dave said it at one point. They've got to move it to the 35, a touchback or something like that.
That's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Originally. And then when they accepted the rule, they made one adjustment to it. Yeah.
Right. If they want to make it dynamic, then you got to change that. So, all right.
You're right.
Do we want to talk about officials? I feel like we beat this dead horse every week. Like, is there anything?
But this isn't this one of those crew that's known for a lot of penalties?
Chet. Is that his name? Chet?
I don't remember.
Chet Blakeman or
Chet Blakeman? What was the name of what was the name of the brother in Weird Science that gets turned into Chet? Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought.
Hey, Chet.
He gets turned into the blob.
One of my all-time favorite
19
movies.
penalties for 19 accepted penalties.
Goodness
for
gracious.
202 yards.
Every single game, gentlemen. I don't care if it's the Steelers. I don't care who it is. If a team is down by 10 or more, they're getting calls to make it in.
It's Cleat
Brockman or Blakeman.
I said Cleat Blakeman.
Chet sounds a lot better.
Yeah, Chet's good. Chet Webb. So, I just because it drives me crazy. We used to be when we would do the preview later on, I would get when it was later on in the evening. Now we do it a little earlier. I would get all these messages in season saying fourth quarter close game alert. And then I would turn the game on and they would do everything they can to get that team back in the game. Just so they don't care who wins or loses. They just want a close game. So people are watching in the fourth quarter. And that is old man shaking fisted clouds. That is my conspiracy report. My theory. I think that's all the time that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. All right. This is Steelers. They do win this game. Believe it or not, they do win the game, despite what a lot of people were saying and feeling right now. And I know it's recency bias. Like Dave said, the first half was great. Second half, not so great. And yet here we are 2-0. Let's do some final thoughts. Dave, we'll start with you.
Oh, well, one of the things that I said when Denver was driving and it got turned away, I'm like, you can try it once. You can try it twice, but don't try it twice. That was pretty nice to see him get his interception there. But I know a lot of it said, oh, look, the offense is only averaging like 15 points a game. How are they going to come from a 10-point deficit? Well, first you have to have a defense that puts you at a 10-point deficit. And right now, that's not the Steelers' defense. So the Steelers' defense is doing as much for the offense as anything right now. I mean, they give up an average of 8 points a game through 2 weeks. 8 points a game. How are the Steelers going to have to come back from a 10-point deficit when the defense isn't even giving up 10 points a game on average? Yet, I know they played Atlanta. They played Denver. Neither of those teams made the playoffs last year. So, but that's who the Steelers had on the schedule. They're 2-0. And that's the important thing. The Steelers haven't had to play perfect football to get to 2-0. They've won the games they were supposed to win. Did Baltimore, who's 0-2? No. Yes. Did they lose to a Kansas City by an inch? They did. But then they lost to Las Vegas at home this week, a game that they were favored to win by how many points was that one? Like 8 or 9, something crazy.
Where's
so
the
what's
Raiders?
that?
The Raiders
Yeah.
game? That was a 9-point spread.
Yeah. I knew it was something like that. So that's the one thing that you do have to take out of this. The Steelers aren't playing perfect football, and they should not be, despite the altitude, breathing easy right now after this win. It was doing enough to get the job done. The defense did great until they started to run out of gas, and then they gave up a little bit, but they still never even gave up a touchdown. So that's something that you have to take with this big matchup next week. You've got to get some of this stuff like the penalties cleaned up and play more complementary football, because that's what the Steelers were missing the second half. The offense did not possess the ball for more than 2 minutes. I know that was at least at one point of the game. They only had 2 possessions in the second half that were more than 2 minutes, and one of them was coming out of the half. That's all the longer that they were giving the defense a rest. So you've got to work together a little bit better in that aspect, clean it up, and just continually get better to then face your next opponent.
All right, Bryan, what's your final thoughts here?
All right. So a couple things here. I don't know why I read the live chat, but I do. And, people are complaining about Arthur Smith. Gosh, I think Arthur Smith is really having a phenomenal year so far. I think this offense looks a whole lot different. You're not getting the execution that you want. These penalties are killing some drives. A lot of things are killing drives, but I'd like to see them get in a groove, and I think it would be fantastic. And another thing about reading the comments that makes me absolutely crazy is I think about Miss Pac-Man. So you munch on that cherry. Next thing you know, you have to get a strawberry. Then it's a pear, a banana, and then for some godforsaken reason, you got to eat a hot pretzel. I don't know why that's a fruit, but that's another show about video games. All I'm saying is you keep needing more and more. I'm happy with 2-0, because if you turn on the Caw podcast on Fans First Sports Network, if you turn on Running Through the Jungle or the unofficial Bengals podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network, man, there are people in a lot worse shape than what we're talking about. We're upset. I'm not telling you how to fan, but we're upset about 2-0 because it's not as pretty as we like. I tell you what, my prom date was not as pretty as I liked, but you know what? I danced and I had a damn good time. And so I'm not going back and thinking, hey, that's my senior prom. I should go back and get my junior prom date. That was probably a little bit better. Your junior prom date was Mason Rudolph. You could want him all you want. He's not beating out Will Levis. He's not even beating out the guys that are in Pittsburgh right now. So keep on looking for something new, looking for something else, when build on what you have, because the foundation is starting and the foundation is going to get stronger, and just enjoy the ride.
Okay. Good stuff. Let's get a final super chat here. Justin Gall gives us $4.99. His special teams, excellent. Again, Calvin Austin always running upright scares me when he gets leveled, holds onto the ball somehow. I think he looks like he gets hit by a truck every return. It looks like a head-on collision with this little guy.
I just want to see him get positive yards and get down.
Yeah. Dennis Pavlov gives us $2. Says, ask a Ravens fan how they feel. Well, we all live in Maryland. That's not too difficult. I'd gladly do that. My final thoughts are short and sweet. Would you rather them be 0-2? That's an honest question. Would you rather, because I know that they haven't played up to most people's standards, would you rather them be 0-2? Not me. I would rather them be 2-0. I'd rather them be 2-0. Let's get off. These are the games. You say you got to win these games. This is a game you got to win, right? You look at last week. The Bengals looked at the Patriots in week 1. That's a game you got to win. The Raiders at Ravens, like Dave brought up, that's a game you got to win. They lose those games. The Steelers aren't losing those games so far this year. They're 2-0. We should be happy. The alternative is not what we want. Be happy with 2-0. Hope they improve. That's all we can do as fans, right? It's a hopeless and helpless feeling at times, but nonetheless, that's all we can do. So, all right, make sure you check us out at steelcurtainnetwork.com for all your Steelers written word stuff. Dave does a lot. I do a lot. Check us out there. Make sure you check out all of our podcasts, like tomorrow's Let's Ride podcast on Monday morning. You'll get Bryan and Coach KT Smith at 11 a.m. Make sure you check out all of it, not just the YouTube stuff, all of it. So I can't say enough about the gentlemen and some of the ladies that do work for us on both steelcurtainnetwork.com and here on the podcast platform. So thank you all very much. Thank you all for your time. And we'll see you on another post-game show. Steelers are 2-0. Enjoy it, folks. See ya.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.